Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Goodness John, and today we're going to be drafting a basic Victorian corset pattern. So you can alter this pattern any way you want, depending on how you want your corset to look like. If this is something you're interested in watching, please stay through to the end of the video. If this is the first time you're seeing me on your screen, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post a new video. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your support. So now let's get into the video. So these are the tools I'll be using. I'll be using a straight ruler, curved ruler, tape, and my markers. So the first thing I'm going to do is draft a basic bodice pattern. I'll start with my shoulder measurement. So my shoulder measurement is 14 divided by 2, that's 7. I will mark that on the pattern paper. And then next I'm going to mark the neckline for the front. So this is the front pattern. So I've marked 3 inches downwards and 3 inches to the side, and then I would use a curved ruler to connect this to get my neck curve. After drawing this, I'll go to the shoulder and drop down by 1 inch, and then I will use a ruler to connect from the neck to the 1 inch line. So now I'm just ensuring that I have 7 inches on my drop so that my measurement is not more than it should be. So I'll use a straight line to connect from the neckline to the 1 inch drop. After drawing the new shoulder line, the next thing I'm going to do is apply my vertical measurement, so all my straight line measurements. So I'll start with my armhole measurement or chest line, which is my round bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. So for me it's 7.75. So I will mark that on the pattern paper. Next I'll mark my bust length. My bust length is 11, and then I'd mark my under bust, which is 14.5. Then I'll mark my waist length, which is 17, and then I'll mark the top length. So my top length is 26 inches. So I used 26 inches when drafting my pattern, but I eventually had to trim off 2 inches because it was too long and I couldn't sit comfortably. So when you're drafting, you have to ensure that it's just at the top of the hip, like the upper, where the hip begins, not too long. So you can use the sitting test. So when you sit down, where your thighs meet your waist, or where your tummy meets your thigh when you sit down. So where it curves, that should be the length of your corset. The back will be slightly longer, but the front shouldn't be too long, otherwise you wouldn't be able to sit comfortably. Okay, so I'll just draw my lines together to connect all my lines, and then we can start drafting the pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is to connect my armhole line. So I'm just marking my shoulder measurement on the chest line, and then I'll use a straight ruler to connect my shoulder line to the measurement I did at the chest line, just so that I have a straight line. Next, I'll measure that line and divide it by 2 and mark the midpoint. At the midpoint, I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch. And then I'll go on the chest line and mark the round bust measurement. So my bust is 38, that's 9.75 or 9.5, sorry. So I'll just mark that on the chest line and also on the bust line. Next I'll go to the waistline and apply my waist measurement. So my waist is 30 divided by 4, that's 7.5. But I'm going to be adding 1 inch, that so I'm going to add that 1 inch to my measurement, so I have 8.5 instead of 7.5. And then I'll go to the hip and measure the hip measurement. So if you're doing for the upper hip, you measure your round upper hip measurements, like where the corset should stop, and then you apply that measurement on the end of the pattern divided by 4. So I'll just apply that measurement on there, and then I'll use curved rulers to connect the lines. Now I'll apply I'll draw my curve, my armhole curve. So I'm going to be connecting the edge of the shoulder line to the 1/2 inch I went in by, and then I'll be connecting that 1/2 inch I went in by to the chest line, so on the bust measurement, so where it stops, I'm going to be connecting all the lines together to give me my armhole curve. You can use your free hand to do this if you don't have a curved ruler. Just ensure that your curve is looking smooth and it's not crooked or too pointed in any place. So I'll just be outlining my pattern now. Next thing I'm going to do is to take my bust band measurement, which is my nipple to nipple measurement. So you'll be able to measure this when, so just place the tape from nipple to nipple and you get your bust band measurement. So I'll mark it at the bust line and down, and then use a straight line to draw it across. So I'm going to be drawing that from the bust line all the way down to the full length of the corset. Next, I'm going to apply my dart. So I'm going to be taking half an inch on both sides of this dart line, this bust band line. So I'll take half an inch on the left and half an inch on the right, and then I'll use a tape to just connect it to the top and to the bottom of the where the line starts and where the line ends. For this pattern, I'll be using 3 darts. I'll be using the waist dart, the shoulder dart, and the bust dart. For the bust dart, I'll be going down by 2 inches. This is constant for anybody you're measuring. You just go down by 2 inches and then connect it to the bust line. And then for the shoulder dart, I'll be splitting the shoulder by 2. So the between the neck, after the neck, so just what is left, I'll split that by 2 and then connect it to the bust point. So I'll be connecting that now, the shoulder line to the bust point, and then the bust dart line to the bust point as well. The half inch on both sides we took at the waist, you can make yours bigger, so it could be 3/4 at the most if you're cinching in as much. But when you're doing 3/4, by the time you do on both sides, it's going to be 1.5. So you have to ensure that you're adding 1.5 to the original measurement at the waist. That's just the difference. So it's depending. You could do half inch, you could do 3/4. So now I'm just outlining my pattern. Up to this point, we've just been doing the basic bodice pattern. So now we'll start applying and altering this pattern in order to get the Victorian corset. So a Victorian corset can be split to as many parts as you want it. It could be as many pieces you want it to be split into, but for me, I'm going to be splitting my front pattern into 4 pieces for half the side. So by the time I join both sides together, it's going to be 8 pieces on the front, but you could do more, you could do less, so it's dependent on you. Just have it in mind that the more pieces you have, the more boning cases you would have, the more snatched it will be. But also, you don't want your boning casings to overlap. So when you're cutting it, ensure it's not too small, unless if your boning is like a small boning that your boning casings doesn't overlap. You have to be careful at the same time. So if you're a beginner, just start with the basics, and then you can do multiple, you can do more, like increase the number of joinings you have and see where you go from there. So I'm going to be starting with my underbust tightening. So I'll apply my actual underbust measurement on here. Don't forget, when I was drafting my basic bodice, I didn't apply my underbust measurement. I just went from bust to waist. So here I'm going to measure my underbust measurement, and my underbust is 31. So I would measure that on here. I have 7 3/4. So this is what I have left. I have 1 inch left. So I'll take that 1 inch and then distribute it at the underbust from the dart leg at the underbust. So, but I'm going to be distributing it unevenly. I'll take half an inch on the center piece and then 3/4 on the side piece. So that means whatever you have left, you're going to be dividing it into 4 and giving 1 part to the center and 3 parts to the side. So you're ensuring that you're not drafting it evenly, but your measurement is going to be starting from the red line, so not the middle point. So it's going to be starting from the red line. So at that red line, I would measure half an inch for my center piece, just as you see me do here, and then I would measure 3/4 from the red line for the side piece, just as you see me do. by the time I mark this, I'm going to use a curve to connect it to the bust line. I'll be using a curve driller, but if you don't have a curve driller, you can use your freehand to do it. But you have to be careful. As I said, you have to be careful so that it's a nice curve. Otherwise, you're not going to have a nice shape. So you have to ensure that it's a nice looking curve. So I'm just going to connect that to the bust line. Okay, from where it stops, I'm going to be connecting that to the length of the corset. So I'm going to be ignoring the red line, so it will pass through the red line. So now this is our new that line, not the red line. The red line doesn't matter any longer. So I'll just be connecting the black line at the underbust to the bottom of the corset, the full length of the corset. So this is my new curved ruler. So now I have two parts of the corset. I'm now going to apply my bust dart and my shoulder darts. So at the shoulder, I'm going to, at the bust line, at that line, I'm going to go up by 1.5. So this is where my corset is going to start, like the um top area of the corset. That's where it's going to start. So I'm going to go up by 1.5 of an inch. You could go up by 1 inch depending on how open you want it, or how much cleavage you're okay with showing or revealing. At the chest line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch for the center front. So that will be my to get my sweetheart neckline. So I'm going down at the center front and I'm going up at the chest line for the top area. So this shape is dependent on you or your client or whoever you're sewing for. And then at the shoulder dart line, I'm going to go out by 1/2 inch on both sides of the line, and then I'll connect that to the bust line. Now I'm going to use a curve ruler to connect my center front curve and my side front curve at the top. So I'll just connect my marks, my lines. So I'm connecting the center front deep to the top of the center front. So where the 1.5 inch I marked initially, I'll connect the front piece and then I'll connect the side piece. So now I'm just checking to ensure that my the cleavage I'm showing is not one that I'm uncomfortable with. I'm just checking my measurement. So this part is really dependent on you. Then for the side, I'll be connecting the curve to the armhole curve. And now I have my basic 4-piece corset. So I could stop here if I want. So but I wouldn't have as many boning channels as I want. So I'm going to be splitting each of these sides by 2. So I'll be splitting the center front by 2 and the side front by 2. So I'll be taking a ruler and drawing a straight line across. I haven't used any specific measurements for this straight line that I've drawn across. I'm just eyeballing it. So the only thing I put into consideration when I was drawing this line is to ensure that by the time I sew my casing channel, it doesn't overlap. So I just having a look to see that my allowance on whatever side I'm doing it is enough that when I fold the casing channel over, it doesn't overlap. I will explain this further when I'm sewing, but basically I'm just trying to split it. So you can split yours straight, you can do it straight, you can do it in any direction you want, in any whatever shape you want the front casing channel to go or direction you want it to go, you can split it. I want mine to slant a bit, so I'm slanting it a bit. So I'll do that for the center front piece, and I'll do that for the side front piece as well. For the center front, my line is a bit doubled up because I wasn't happy with the initial line I drew, so I drew another one, but I used lines to mark it across just so that I know the line that is my actual line. So for the side front, I'll be splitting that also. I'm just trying to see which direction I want it to go, and now I'm happy with where the ruler is and how it looks. So I'll just draw a straight line. Okay, so before I apply my dots, my actual dots, taking in my dots lines, I'll go and split the shoulder, the red line at the shoulder dot, and then split the bust line at the side front in order to close the bust dot before I can start imputing my actual dots on the body. When I'm cutting it, I would ensure that I don't cut it all off totally. I just peel it a little bit so that I can move it around. So by the time I've done that, I'll just use move the other piece just so that it covers the red line, so it's on the red line. You would notice that as I moved it, my lines no longer align, so my side front line doesn't align, and this line I drew to split it doesn't align. So I'm going to redraw those lines to connect it so they all align. When we shift it, the side front, that curved part becomes pointed. So you'd have to go in and smoothing the curve so that it's not looking pointed. Otherwise, when you start sewing, it's not going to look good. So I'm just connecting the lines that went out of alignment as we as we covered the bust dart. So I'll connect from the bust to the under bust. So the next thing I'm going to do after that is to redraw my line, the line I used to split the side front in two. So I'm going to redraw the line. I'll just be connecting from the waist to the top with a straight line. So that previous line, I'm just scratching that out. I'm just using lines to cross over it just so I'm sure which lines are my correct lines. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to apply my waist dart. So this is the point where you snatch the waist. So you can decide to snatch the waist as much as you want. So what I would usually do is I'll take a tape around the waist and pull it to as far as the tape can go, or as much as the person wants is comfortable with. So if you want it really snatched, then take it as far as the tape can go. So that measurement is the measurement you'll be using for the waist. So for instance, my waist measurement is 30, but when I pull the tape, my waist can go to 26. So that means when I'm snatching my waist, I'll be removing 4 inches from my measurement. So this is dependent on you, the level of comfort you want, or the clients and the level of comfort they want, or whoever you're sewing for. So it's dependent on you. That's how much you are going to be taking out. So because I'll be taking out 2 inches from 4 inches from the waist, I'm splitting it two in front and two at the back. I have two lines that I'm going to apply my dart. So that means this front piece is half of the front. So I have two pieces for the front. That means on one piece, this one piece is here, I'm going to take out 1 inch, and then the other side, I'm going to take out 1 inch. So I'm going to be removing quarter of an inch on both sides. So by the time I remove quarter on one side, quarter on the other side, then quarter on the side front side and quarter. So that means on the center front, I've removed half inch, that's quarter, 1 inch, and then on the side front, I remove quarter, um, half inch. So half inch, that's 1 inch. So on the other sides, don't forget this is just one side of the front. So on this other side, I would have removed 1 inch as well. So that's 2 inches on the front. I'll do the same thing for the back. I'll remove 2 inches from the back as well. So depending on, so that's how I'm splitting it. Your snatching is dependent on how much you want it to go. So how snatched you want it to go. So this is where I apply the snatcher. I hope my explanation makes sense. If you don't understand, feel free to rewind over and over till you get what I'm trying to say, or you can drop a question in the comments, and I'll be able to answer your questions. Okay, so I'm removing 1 inch from this side. So I'll be removing quarter of an inch on both sides of this side front. So quarter of an inch, quarter of an inch. So by the time I finish doing that, I have half inch on one side and half inch on the other side. And then if I join all my pieces together, I would have removed 2 inches from the front. So I'm going to be joining with a straight line I'll join that to the under bust, and then the under bust to the full length. So I'll do that for the center front that knew that line, and the side front knew that line. So looking at this, I have 4 pieces for the front, and I'm going to be cutting out all this part. The parts I'm shading, I'm going to be cutting all of those out. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces for the front. By the time I cut it, it's going to be 8. So 4 on this side and 4 on the other side. This is just half of the pattern. So you can decide to shape the bottom of the corset however you want. If you want it curved, if you want it straight, however you want it, you can decide to shape it. So wanted mine a little curved. So at the side front, I went up by 1 inch and then connected this to the center front with a curve, a slight curve. Once again, you can freehand it or you can use a curved ruler depending on what you have available to you. So after I connected this, now I have my pattern. So the black lines are my actual pattern. One very important thing you need to do when you're making a Victorian corset is to ensure that you're labeling. You have to label, as you can never go wrong with too many labels. You have to label what part comes before what part, label where it goes. So I'm labeling center front 1, center front 2, and I'm labeling 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I label up, down. You have to ensure you label which part is up and which part is down. Otherwise, you would mix this up and then you'll be so confused. Please don't forget to label. This is very important. I'm going to cut up my pieces, and then after I've cut out the front pattern, I'll move on to the back pattern. So I'll be drawing my horizontal lines for the back piece just as I did for the front, my shoulder line, shoulder measurements. So the difference in length for the back piece is the back piece is 2 inches shorter than the front. So I measured 26 initially for the length for the front, but on the back piece is 24. This is because of the side fronts that we took out that 2 inches for both that. So by the time it drops, the side front reduces by 2 inches. So we are ensuring that the front and the back are aligned in measurement. So that's why we've taken out 2 inches from the length. So I'm just marking the same measurements I marked on the front. So for the neckline, instead of for the front we did 3.5 by 3. For the back we're going to be doing 1.5 by 3. So 1.5 inch depth, so as deep as the front pattern. And then I'll just connect the other lines. For the armhole for the back, instead of going in by 1.5 inch at midpoint, I'll I wouldn't be doing that for the back, so I'll just be connecting the armhole from the midpoint. It's going to just be the normal measurement, and then I'm going to curve out from the midpoint to the bust measurement divided by 4 that we marked at the chest line. I'll go ahead and connect the rest of my lines and draw my bust pan line, so my waist dart on the back. So I'll be taking 0.5 inch on both sides of this line and then connect it to the bust line and then to the full length. I already put this 1 inch measurement into consideration when I was taking the waist measurement, just as I did for the front. And then I'll just mark it and then draw my darts. So the next thing I'm going to do is to draw my back curve. So for my back curve, I'm going to go down by 1 inch and then connect that to the armhole. So this measurement here is dependent on you. If you want it deeper, you can take it deeper. If you want it higher, you can take it higher. So I'm just going to connect mine. Now we have the basic back pattern. At this point, we'll start trying to split it. I'm going to be splitting my back piece into 3. So I'm going to have 3 pieces for each half of the back. So I'm just drawing my line where I want it to be. So for the back piece, you have to ensure that your pieces, so how you split it is straight and not slanted the way you do the front. So I'm just ensuring that my line is straight here. So the back piece has to be straight and the front piece you can slant it any direction that you want. So I'm just going to draw my line. So because I have just 3 pieces, I'm going to put all of those 2 inches left into one into the back piece, like one half will have 1 inch and the other half will have the other 1 inch. So that means instead of 1/4 inch as I did in front, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch on both sides of this waistline, just so that that snatches it up by 4 inches. So 2 inches at the back and 2 inches in front. I hope this video has been helpful and easy to follow. I hope you're able to follow the video. And if you have any questions, drop in the comment section. Please hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this, and turn on the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post a new video. So I have this three pieces for the back, and because I want mine to have the loop, the eyelet and rope joining, I'm going to be removing 1 inch from that measurement. If you want yours to have zip, you'd have to add your zip allowance. So it's at this point it's dependent on how much you want it to be. Like if you want the gap between the eyelet to be wider, you can increase this measurement here. If you want zip, you can add your zip allowance, so it's dependent on you. So now I have my 3 pieces for the back, and by the time I join it to the other side, it will be 6. So I have 6 pieces for the back and 8 pieces for the front. That's 14 pieces. So I'm just going to split the front and the back. So something that's what I should just mention. The side front and the side back may be a bit different because of that 1 inch. Like by the time you compare the shape together, it's slightly different, and you need the side front and the side back to be the same. So when I was transferring to fabric, I used the curve of the side front to draft the curve of the side back, just so that they align by the time I'm joining together. I hope you understand what I mean. Because of that, the slight difference, because you need both the side front and the side back to have the same shape at the curve. Thank you all for watching, and see you in my next video.